Hey guys, I'm Nick and welcome back to the channel. Well, today we're talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 1. It's finally hit our TV screens and I've got the review of our first episode entitled The Broken Circle. Now, we kind of thought the first episode of the new season would be Una's trial, but it turns out that it's in fact the Klingon episode. So that's kind of cool for our first episode to start off the new season. In fact, we kind of don't get really almost any number one and almost any Pike in this episode at all. Pike obviously is off trying to find, I think it's Defense Council or something for Una. And Una's in prison, which means it's a kind of very sort of Spock kind of esque story with a big focus as well on Mbenga and Chapel. We get to see how Spock copes with taking command of the Enterprise for about 3 days. And we get the introduction of our brand new chief engineer, Pelia, who turns out to be a very quirky character and also maybe a little bit different than what we might have expected, but also at the same time, kind of what I expected. So let's get into our review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 1, The Broken Circle. This episode starts off with some really pretty shots of Starbase 1. The Enterprise is docked there, doing a bit of a service and a bit of oil change and clean the windshields down and everything while they're in Starbase. Una's obviously in lockup. She's in a cell there. Pike's chatting to her about her defense. Obviously her trial is coming up soon. She needs a good defense attorney or somebody that can help significantly at least, which seems to be what Pike is on the case for. So he's off in a shuttlecraft to go and track down some help to help Una's trial, obviously coming up in episode 2. And while Pike is off doing that, Spock is put in charge of the Enterprise. He's captain for a few days during Pike's absence. And it seems like Spock's a little bit stressed about this concept of taking command. He's got a bit of a session with Dr. Mbenga and his stress levels are a bit high, and Mbenga kind of recommends maybe try playing some music on your Vulcan lute, the old Kiathara. It's something like Kiathara or something to that effect. I don't think they called it by name particularly often in the original series at all. I think Spock just trotted it out and had a bit of a play on it, and they never really gave it a name verbally too often because it was obviously too difficult to pronounce. Meanwhile, the Enterprise is obviously at space dock there, getting a few upgrades done and a few calibrations configured and everything with this team of engineers and everything that's on board the ship, where we get a distress call from Lan. Obviously, the last time we saw Lan was in episode 9 of season 1, where she went off with the young girl who was one of the survivors of that Gorn attack from the USS Peregrine, I think it was. She went off with her to try to find her family and everything. So she took a bit of a leave of absence, go off and trying to help her out, because I guess she saw herself in that young girl being a survivor of a Gorn attack when she was a child, so she wanted to help her out and took a bit of a leave of absence from the Enterprise to go and sort that out with her. And it seems like she's found this girl's parents, but there's a bit of a situation going on there. There's a colony of primary Klingons that I guess profited quite substantially during the whole Klingon Federation war thing that was going on in the early seasons of Discovery, with arms sales and all that sort of thing going on. But obviously now that the war's over, profits are down. So they're wanting to kind of start the war up again to essentially reinvigorate their sales. And it seems like Lan's got herself mixed up in some shady dealings with the Klingons on this mining planet. And she sent the distress call out to the Enterprise or whatever to try to get a bit of help back from them. And in long Star Trek tradition, we get Spock mounting a bit of a secret rescue mission, I guess stealing the Enterprise. This is obviously, Kirk and co were really good at this. They like to steal the Enterprise and take it out on unauthorized missions and everything quite regularly. Not to mention most recently in Star Trek Picard, when Picard and Riker and Seven stole the Titan as well. So this is another one in the long list of situations where they take the ship, maybe not where the top brass at Starfleet would maybe want them to go. So in order to get the Enterprise off space dock and everything and off away on their secret mission, the crew decides to sort of fake a bit of a coolant leak on the warp core to try to sneak out of there without too many questions. But our new chief engineer, Pelia, is very savvy. She recognises a warp core breach when she sees one, and she knows that there's some dodginess going on here with the crew trying to steal the ship, and that the coolant leak's all a bit of a fake.
It's a fake.
She's a pretty savvy chief engineer. And we get our first appearance here of our new chief engineer, played by Carol Kane as Pelia. And she's a really quirky character. We kind of knew that she would be, because these are the roles that Carol Kane tends to do over the years. And I love the fact that they've made her an alien, but in complete human form. And Spock, obviously later in the episode, says that her race hid out on Earth for years and weren't discovered, but they were sort of, you know, quite unusual, quirky kind of, I guess, aliens. Her character is kind of a bit of a quirky mix of a whole bunch of characters that reminds me of from science fiction, to quirky engineers like what Tony Shalhoub played in Galaxy Quest, or even weird kind of characters like in Babylon 5. We had Zathras, who was sort of a very sort of quirky character who was like, I guess, one of the caretakers of the machine at the heart of the planet and everything. He was a sort of a weird, quirky maintenance engineer kind of character or whatever that had a sort of a sixth sense sort of thing as well. You know, there's obviously maybe a little bit of Yoda thrown in there as well. There's this big sort of melting pot of quirky characters from science fiction that sort of Pelia reminds me of, and I think she's going to be a fan favourite this season. And it seems that Pelia is a bit sick of her day job, working at Starfleet Academy or wherever she works, and she wants a bit of excitement and adventure, so she's completely down with them still in the Enterprise. She knows exactly what they're doing, and she's all up for it. Then we get the really funny scene with Spock in the captain's chair. They got to go to warp, and you know, it's like, what are you going to say to go to warp? Everybody's got their thing. Pike, who likes to say hit it, and when the other officers on the bridge says that her previous captain used to say zoom, and obviously we've had all sorts of, Picard does engage and all that sort of thing. And we kind of saw this clip before in a trailer. Even though I'd seen it before, it still made me laugh or whatever. The way Spock just sort of says, I would like the ship to go now. So yeah, obviously the pressure was on Spock just a little bit too much to come up with something on the spur of the moment. That was the best he could do at short notice. So it's, maybe they won't ask him again. Maybe they'll just sort of say, okay, let's just maybe not put the pressure on too much to come up with something just yet. Next, we see Lan on the Klingon mining planet. She's with a bunch of Klingons, and they're playing a bit of a drinking game, reminding me of the classic scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Karen Allen's character Marion was doing shots of vodka or whatever it was with the Tibetan locals or Nepalese locals or whatever, and drinking them under the table. It looks like Lan's kind of doing the same thing with a bunch of Klingons here. And the makeup on the Klingons is definitely a bit of a mix of what we've seen with Klingons in the past. Obviously, thank God we didn't go down the Season 1 Discovery Klingon path. That's well and truly behind us, and we're never going to go there again, because that was a very bad mistake. But I think we saw Klingons here that sort of reminded me a little bit of the makeup in the Klingon, say, we saw in the motion picture, or the Klingon makeup we saw in like Star Trek VI, Undiscovered Country, or the Klingons that were in Star Trek V. So they weren't typically your standard Rick Berman era Star Trek Klingons. They were a little bit of a variance. So that was, I think, a good compromise to go. We're obviously in that era, so I guess it makes sense to more replicate the Klingon makeup that we saw throughout the 6 TOS feature films in terms of Klingon makeup than it was to go for the sort of, Rick Berman era TV era Klingons. And it was good that Lan managed to reunite Ariana, the girl that she saved or whatever from the Gorn outpost, with her family. That was good to see that she's managed to achieve her mission in that regard. But they've got to do something about these Klingon mercenaries who are looking to restart the war for profit. And our team gets a little bit separated. Mbenga and Chapel get taken by a bunch of Klingons, while Lan tries to get the bottom of some of these dealings by doing a bit of a sale of some phases and so forth, with the Klingons to work out what's going on that front. And it would appear that the Klingons have managed to salvage themselves a beaten-up Federation starship, and they're going to use this starship to start a new war. They're going to, I guess, fly the starship into Klingon space and attack a Klingon ship using this starship that reignites tensions and plunges the Alpha Quadrant back into another war with the Klingons. Interesting that we get Mbenga and Chapel obviously off on this situation, and it seems like they carry with them these little vials of, well, let me just call it super soldier serum, because it seems like they've got this emergency drug that they can inject into themselves to give them enhanced, I guess, strength in moments of emergency, which I guess, helps even the odds in terms of their escaping from these Klingons that obviously, are much higher level of strength and combat proficiency to Mbenga and Chapel. Although I'm not sure it would be such a chore for Babs. Alassane McKinn, because I know this actor who plays Dr. Mbenga is in fact a black belt in, I think, several martial arts. I think he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So it was interesting knowing that he was an actual black belt as an actor, partaking in this fight scene or whatever amongst all these Klingons was kind of cool. But I guess it was maybe just a little bit more of a stretch to believe that a little Nurse Chapel or whatever would be able to, kick the crap out of a bunch of Klingons. So I guess they really had to give her something to boost her energy levels and strength levels in the form of this drug to even the playing field. Mbenga reprograms the transponder on the starship so that it's able to broadcast a message to the Enterprise to let them know to destroy it. We get a really cool look at a Klingon D7 battle cruiser that kind of comes into the system just as the Federation starship launches, and it's going to go and start a war and everything, so they have to sort that situation out. We've obviously got the Enterprise hiding in that asteroid field of red crystals and everything, hiding its kind of energy signature, so there's a bit of a race against time to take out this other Federation ship, which they say is a Crossfield class. Crossfield being the same class as the USS Discovery, although this ship kind of didn't look that much like the Discovery to me. They said it was Crossfield class. Maybe the fact that it was extra beaten up and everything. I'm not sure whether maybe it's a refit, maybe it's Crossfield class refit or something to that effect, perhaps. That's just made it look a little bit different to the USS Discovery. We get a cool dogfight amongst the asteroid field or whatever between the ships, and poor old Mbenga and Chapel have to do a bit of a spacewalk without EV suits to escape the ship, which is obviously about to be destroyed by the Enterprise. So they blow themselves out the airlock with not much more than a very basic suit with a transponder in it to alert the Enterprise to their presence in space. Once I guess they're clear of the debris of the exploding Federation ship that the Klingons have stolen. So the stolen ship gets destroyed by the Enterprise. Chapel and Mbenga are rescued via transporter, even though they are a little bit on the icy side, obviously being in space for 30 seconds or whatever it was they were in there for. They'll need to warm their toes by the heater for a bit, I think, after that. And I love Spock's negotiation with the Klingon captain, going down to the planet, drinking a bunch of blood wine and, getting all kind of, channeling his inner Klingon, I guess, just to smooth things over. Because even though Spock's explanation of the whole scenario was kind of very plausible, the Klingon was itching for a bit of a fight. He didn't want to let it all go. And Spock had to kind of talk him around about just settle down. We're not starting a war here. Come on, let's just go down to the planet. Drink a few gallons of blood wine and everything will be okay. That was a fun scene, just sort of trying to see Spock talk the Klingon down from war and also, enjoy himself and how at the end of the episode he kind of buddied up to the Klingon captain or whatever and he gained a bit of respect. I think that was a very good scene with Spock, just, chummying up to the Klingon captain and, loosening up a bit so he can go toe-to-toe with the Klingons in the drinking department. Obviously, yes, Spock at the end has a bit of a chat with Pelia, recognising her as a Lanthanite, an ageless race, or a race at least that lives a very, very long time. That's a very quirky alien race that appears human, but obviously was managed to stay hidden on Earth for many, many centuries and so forth before they were kind of identified as a sort of a strange quirky alien species. So that's a cool new addition to a bit of Star Trek canon there. We see Spock get reprimanded a bit by Admiral April. He's not too happy about him stealing the ship, but it's at least everything's worked out fine. It could have gone a bit sour, but it didn't. I think, as April says in this episode, he's happy to let it all slide, and the fact that he's got a very serious Klingon-sized hangover from drinking all that blood wine is punishment enough for Spock's crimes of stealing the Enterprise. And there was a bit of emotion from Spock at the end of this episode here. Obviously seeing Chapel in a debilitated state there, having been unconscious and everything out in space. There's some definite emotions coming through on Spock's behalf towards Chapel at the end of this episode. So that's interesting to see how the relationship between them, obviously there was a little bit of, stuff going on in season 1 or whatever, particularly in that Space Pirates episode where they had to do the kiss and everything, and then they kind of, it was sort of like, there's sort of some feelings here, but they can't go there, and it seems that that's being brought up again in this episode. So it's going to be interesting to see where the relationship between Spock and Chapel goes during the course of this season. And in the end of the episode, we find out from Admiral April that there is a serious concern with what's going on. The situation with the Gorn is potentially escalating, and they've got Gorn sightings or whatever in the edge of Federation space, and it appears that a Gorn attack might be coming very, very soon. All in all, I really enjoyed this episode. I think it had some really funny moments in there from Spock, and had some funny moments in there with the new Chief Engineer Pelia. We had some cool action with the Klingons. Good to see we're back on track with the Klingons now in Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2. So yeah, I think all of the bad stuff has been corrected. We're never going back there again. So that's, yeah, it's good to see the return of the Klingons in this first episode of the new season. But guys, let me know what your thoughts were on this first episode, Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 1. Leave your thoughts in the comments section and we'll get chatting about that. As always, please don't forget to subscribe to Sci-Finatics if you haven't done so already. Don't be shy, click on that big subscribe button to stay up to date and current with all the latest Star Trek news on YouTube. Check out all my merch in the merch store. Plenty of Star Trek themed t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, caps, you name it, it's all there. Check it out and pick yourself up a bargain and help support the channel at the same time. I'll be back very soon with my next video. I'll catch you guys soon.